Welcome to the technical seminar on Kansai Special DFB1012PS MD3, made in Japan by Morimoto Manufacturing. This is a single chain stitch machine. Single chain stitch meaning blind looper. There is no thread through the looper, only thread through your needles. Okay, it comes in with a very large needle. The elastic thread needs a large size needle. So it comes in standard with a size 21 needle, and you can go down to a size 16 needle. The most popular use for this machine is ladies and girls wear. Ladies and girls clothes, mainly blouses and dresses. Tube tops, mainly for tube tops. And here is a quick look at the stitch with elastic thread. This is what it looks like with elastic thread. And you can get up to 200% stretch with this machine here. You can get 200% stretch. We have an introduction to sharing and smocking video on YouTube, so you can get more information on the different types of machines we make for sharing. And it also gives you more information on how much stretch you get and some of the other features of this sharing machine. Okay, so now we're going to have a quick technical seminar to show you where some of your adjustments are. First, we're going to remove the covers. I'm going to remove the top cover. More screws hold the top cover. We're going to remove the faceplate. This is where you adjust your needle bar height, your needle bar twist. Okay, we're going to remove our cloth plate. Okay. Going to remove our presser foot, 4mm Allen, presser foot. Okay. We're also going to remove the reservoir cover here to show you where the looper avoid eccentric is. We're going to remove the needle plate and the adapter plate. Okay, let me take the needles out. Right now we have 6 needles in here, but this is a 12 needle 1/4 inch gauge machine. 12 needles, 1/4 inch between each needle, 2 3/4 inches overall. It also comes in a 3/16 gauge, 12 needle, 3/16 between each needle, 2 1/16 overall. Okay, we're going to remove our adapter plate and our needle plate. Okay, now we're going to remove our feed dog. Okay, and I'm going to remove the reservoir cover. Okay, that's your looper avoid eccentric, which we'll talk about in a little while. Okay, now we're going to go over some of the general timings of the machine. You could also go to our previous video on YouTube for DFB1404 and DFB1412 timing. Many of the adjustments are the same as the DFB1404 and 1412, which we already have on YouTube. Okay, so the first thing you would do is needle bar height and the twist of the needle bar. Okay, so your needles have to be centered in your needle plate holes. So So you would put all 12 needles in and make sure they're centered in the holes. Each needle should be equal distance from the front of the needle plate hole and to the left and to the right of the needle plate holes. That's how you set the twist of your clamp. The height of your needle bar, which you would adjust right here. You loosen this 3mm Allen screw, and you can change the height of your needle bar and the twist of your needle bar. Okay, the twist again, equal distance. Every needle, all 12 needles, should be equal distance from the front of the needle plate hole and from the sides of the needle plate hole. Then your needle bar height, we have a gauge. We have a gauge for your needle bar height. 13.5 millimeters should be the needle bar height. So right now it looks like it's off maybe a ½ millimeter. It's close enough, but if I wanted to raise it, a little bit, we come right back in here, we loosen that, we raise the bar a little bit, and then we go back and make sure that we're lined up in our needle plate holes. So after we set our needle bar height and our needle bar twist, now we want to look at the angle of the looper. How do we set the angle of the looper? Okay, here's our blind loopers. Now we're going to discuss the angle of the looper angle, which also is the position, the left to right position of your looper holder. Okay, the looper angle is pretty much, it's a 1 degree angle. It's a 1 degree angle, which means pretty much that the looper is straight. It's not turned in a little. It's not turned the opposite way. It's pretty much a straight 1 degree angle. Okay, and the way we get this, okay, when we pull this looper, this is your looper breakdown. Your looper breakdown lever or shaft. Okay, that's how the looper breaks down. When you put it back in place, this pin must snap into the looper rocker and lock in. Now, when we check the angle of the looper, or the position of where the looper rocker should be, we're going to have to lift this and push it the opposite way. So make sure you don't leave it that way. After checking the looper angle, please make sure that this pin here locks back into the looper rocker. Very important. If you run the machine without that pin locked in, you're going to have damage. Okay, so the looper angle, basically everything is, we want to get, what is the looper angle? What is the looper angle? Okay, as the looper approaches the scarf, okay, do we want to twist it in a little as it gets there? Do we want it the other way? This is a 1 degree angle, pretty much straight in. Okay, and the way we show that, okay, we pull out the looper shaft, the looper actuating shaft, we push it back, we bring our needles down, pull the shaft out, okay, and we're going to line up the needles with the back of the looper. The widest part of the looper, the thickness of the shaft, you follow that up, the widest part of the looper right there, and you want the needle to be 20% from the right side of the looper. The needle should be in 20%. So there it is, the thickness of that looper, the thickness right here of the looper, the width of this looper right here. Okay, the needle should be 1/5 or 20% to the left of the looper, of the right side of the looper. Okay, and the way you get that adjustment is by loosening these 2 screws. You loosen these 2 screws and you can move the looper holder left or right. Okay, so basically the needle at this position, basically the needle should be towards the right side of the looper. Okay, it's 1/5 to 20% in from the right side of the looper, but basically by eye I'm just going to make sure these all look pretty good. They're closer to the right side. That would be about middle. That would be closer to the left side. Right there's middle. We're talking 20% of the width of the looper. Okay, that one looks good. This one here looks like it's in a little bit further. And this one here, but we will fine tune that. but that's the angle of your looper. Okay, and then again, make sure after you check it. Okay, if the looper stays back like that, the pin is not locked in. If you run the machine like that, it could cause major damage. So please make sure that you lock that pin, snap it, make sure it locks back in to the looper rocker. Okay, also, we forgot to mention how close to the needle do you want to be. So the looper should be as close to the needle as possible without deflecting it. When the point of the needle first gets, when the point of the looper, when it first reaches the needle, you want to be as close as possible to the scarf without deflecting the needle. As close as possible to the needle without deflecting it. Okay, so if you look closely here on the third looper, this one is hitting it, you can even hear it. That's hitting too much. If you come back here and look at this fifth looper, okay, that's as close as possible. You don't want any wink there, there's no space at all. As close as possible, but without deflecting it. So this looper is too close to the needle. We would have to back that off a little bit. So we can come right here. These screws right here, each looper has their individual screw. And as you can see, that's how you change the angle too. Okay, so looper screw, bring it right up against the scarf. Tighten it up. Check it. There's no space. And we don't hear that anymore. It's not pinging. It's not hitting the looper or it's not deflecting the needle, hitting the needle or deflecting the needle. All right, next. Next is your synchronization or your timing. Okay? What does that mean? When the loopers come in and the needles go up, the point of your looper should be in a certain spot on your scarf of your needle. And the same thing when the loopers are coming back and the needles are going down, the point of the looper should be at a certain position on the scarf of the needle. For this machine, it's 4 millimeters. Here's a little picture. For 1012 here, this is 1412 on top, which is a double chain. 1012 is a single chain stitch. So, it's 4 millimeters above the eye of the needle. Okay, that's the position on the scarf that you want. So, as my loopers are coming in and my needles are going up, when the point of my looper gets to the scarf, gets to the middle of the needle, you want to be 4 millimeters above the eye of the needle. And then on your backstroke, needles are coming down, loopers are going back. Again, about the same position, 4 millimeters above the eye of the needle. Okay, we also have to set the looper distance. When your needles are right here, picture here, 6'3", looper distance. When your needles are all the way down and the loopers are all the way forward, okay, towards you, needles all the way down, 1.8 millimeters between the needle and the point of the looper. So this distance right here, this space right here between your looper, the point of your looper, and the needle should be 1.8 millimeters. Okay, here's the distance right here. Needles all the way down, loopers all the way forward, all the way towards you, all the way back. Okay, you want a 1.8, it's 1.8 to the middle of the needle. So that's about 1.5 millimeter to this front side of the needle. Okay, 1.8 to the middle, so it's probably about 1.5 to the front side. Okay, and to make this adjustment, you have to go inside under the reservoir cover. There's a 7 millimeter hexagon screw. And if you loosen that screw, you can move your looper holder, the entire looper holder. You can move the entire looper holder forward or backwards to get your looper distance. Again, if you visit the prior video on DFB 1404, 1412, you can see all of these adjustments. Okay, getting back to the position of your looper on the scarf. As we said, we're going in, you want to be 4 millimeters above the eye, and it's about the same coming back, 4 millimeters above the eye of the needle. With the way you make this adjustment, if that's not right, that's called your timing or your synchronization. Okay, right here is your looper avoid eccentric. You have these two screws right here. If you loosen them, you can move it. You can speed the loopers up by moving it one way, or you can slow them down by moving them the opposite way. So that's how you would get this positioning. Again, you can see us adjust the looper eccentrics on our previous videos, but that's where you would get your formula. So if I move that a little bit, the loopers are going to be higher on the scarf coming in and lower on the scarf coming back. And for this machine, we want them about the same. So that's what this is going to give you. It's going to slow up your loopers or speed up your loopers. Okay, so basically, we spoke about 4 different ways to adjust how to set your looper. Number 1, you got your looper distance, 1.8 millimeters. Number 2, you got your angle. We spoke about your angle, pretty much straight. It's a 1 degree, which you bring the needle down to the back side of the looper. 1/5, that's that 1/5 setting from the right side of the looper. Okay, and then you have your synchronization, your timing. In this case, we want 4 millimeters above the eye going in and 4 millimeters above the eye coming out. Okay, and then you don't want to be too close to the needle. Where do you position the looper? Point of the looper as close as possible to the needle when it first gets to the needle. When it first reaches the scarf, you want to be as close as possible without deflecting it. Okay, those are your 4 settings, pretty much your 4 settings on your looper. Okay, very good. This machine doesn't have any needle guards. You don't need any needle guards on this machine. Other machines have needle guards which sort of protect the needle from deflecting too much when you're going over seams and everything. But the shirring machine usually doesn't go any thick seams, so this machine doesn't have any needle guards. Okay. Next, how do you adjust your stitch length? How do you adjust your stitch length? Okay, stitch length is right here. This is your stitch regulator. You loosen this nut. Again, you can go to our video, DFB1012PS. Our previous video has all of these adjustments on there. So I'm not going to make them all here. You can go visit that video. But you would loosen this nut, and then by turning this screw, if you loosen that screw, you get a longer stitch. If you tighten that screw, you get a shorter stitch. Now your puller. First you set your stitch length, then you have to set your puller in relationship to your stitch length. You don't want your puller pulling too fast or too slow. So to adjust that, you can get a small amount of adjustment by loosening the nut here and raising this up and down. You see the slot in that lever? There's a slot in the lever, and by moving it up and down, you can speed up your puller or slow up your puller. If you need a large amount of adjustment, here, up here inside your top cover, you have a 3/8 millimeter nut. Again, if you loosen that nut and move it back, you're going to speed up the puller. If you move it forward, you're going to slow down the puller. So the puller you must set in relationship to your stitch length. So if you put it at the maximum stitch length, you're going to have to adjust your puller accordingly. If you make a very small stitch, you're going to have to adjust your puller accordingly. So now we're going to put it back together, and first we'll show you how it sews elastic thread. For elastic thread, you need a metering device. Elastic thread, you do not use tensions. You use a metering device to put the tension, for the amount of tension that you need on the elastic thread. Okay, so first I'm going to put it back together, and then we will show you how to set up your metering device. That's for elastic thread. Okay, now we're going to install our feed dog. You have to drop your loopers down, hold the shaft, loopers drop down, feed dog, slot it, drop the feed dog right in there on that screw. And before we do that, you have a height adjustment pins here, height adjustment pin, height adjustment pin. That's to level. You want to level your feed dog. It's got to be level on both sides. This is a wide feed dog, so it has to be level all the way across. So you have 2 height adjustment pins. You would loosen these screws. If you have to change the height, loosen the screws and adjust those pins. Okay, now we drop the feed dog in here. Tighten up the screw. I sort of get get my hands in there so I put equal pressure down. So we're on top of those pins. Okay. Then we take your needle plate. I have to remove the needles to get this in there. I either have to remove the puller or take the needles out to get that in there. So we'll have to take the needles out real quick. Good thing I only have 5 in here. Slide the needle plate in there, and as we look from this side, you want basically a full tooth. One full tooth above the needle plate. The tooth of the feed dog, approximately one full tooth. But a good way you can check it, put your needle back in, put your needle back in, and just take, you could use one of our Kansai special rules, but just, you want to make sure as you turn the hand wheel, needle's going down, feed dog is also going down. And you don't, just as the needle enters the throat plate, that's when you want your feed dog to disappear below the needle plate. So just as the needle enters the needle plate, and this one looks perfect, your feed dog should disappear. Okay, so I'll show that again. We have feed dog. The feed dog's above the plate, I'm turning the hand wheel, above the plate, needle entering needle plate, and the feed dog disappears. Now you want the same thing on the other side. Same thing on the other side. Okay, this one looks a little higher, so it's slightly higher. This side is dropped down all the way, and this one is slightly higher. So in that situation, I would have to, those pins I showed you earlier, you would have to take this back off. And your height adjustment pin. All right. You would loosen that screw and lower the height adjustment pin on this side, because this side was a little higher than that side. Just lower it a little bit, make sure they're level on back side, on both sides. Okay, we spoke about our feed dog. Now we're putting the needle plate back on. And now we're going to talk about the presser foot. Okay, the sharing presser foot. Sharing presser foot. These steps are what gives you your sharing or your gathering. The different steps on the presser foot. The different steps on the presser foot makes a crease in the garment as you're sewing it. Okay, and we have different steps for more or less sharing. Right here we have a 2mm step, and it also comes with a 4mm step. Okay, for more or less sharing. You can also run just a flat foot without any of the steps. You can run it flat, and when you're sewing elastic thread, you will get a little bit of gathering just by using, just with the elasticity of the thread, you're going to get some gathering. So if you only want a small amount of gathering with elastic thread, you might run it with just a flat foot. You might not need the step. If you want a little more sharing, you would add a 2mm step, and if you want even more than that, you can go with the 4mm step. Just for an example, okay, right here, I would say this right here is a large amount of sharing, right there. That's a lot of sharing. And then if you change to the, right here, you might see, if you use the elastic thread only, you might get something that looks like that right here. Okay, so now we're going to install the presser foot. Presser foot bar is right here. Tension spring, more or less. If you need more tension or less tension. Okay, we're going to lift. We're going to lift our presser bar and put our presser foot on there. Okay, put my needle back in quick to line it up. Let me get a couple in there on each side to make sure we center it good. Okay. And we're going to make sure we're centered. Make sure your needles are centered in the hole. Equal distance, front, back, sides of the hole. And 4 millimeter. Hold it in place while you tighten it. Okay. And our presser foot is on with the 2 millimeter step. Okay, next we're going to discuss the eyelets in the metering device. So when you're sewing elastic thread, you're going to use this metering device. This is a metering device. We're going to show you how to install the metering device. This is what you use for your tension on the elastic thread. When you sew with elastic thread, this is what we're going to use for our tension. Okay, this will be mounted here, like so. Okay, and these are the eyelets. We use these 2 eyelets when we sew elastic thread. Metering device back here, 2 screws. Okay, this arm is what's going to drive your metering device. This will connect back here to the puller drive shaft. So this metering device will connect here. Alright, so I'm going to screw it down here. Okay, installing our metering device. Okay. And then our lever right here. Remove the nut. Okay. Okay, we go screw. 2 washers on this side. 1 washer on the inside. Then your ball joint here, your connecting rod. Ball joint connecting rod. And then another washer. So your 2 washers go on the right side. And your nut. And if you think this lever right here you can get more or less metering by moving this lever here. This puller right here will pull faster or slower by adjusting this lever. Okay. Also the tension, we'll talk about that when we thread it up. This is how you get the tension on your elastic thread. Okay, but we're gonna let's tighten this up. I think it's a 10 millimeter. 10 millimeter. And that's all there is to putting on your metering device. This is attached to your puller drive and 2 screws. And there's 2 pins on there too, so there's holes in the casting for the pins to secure it better, and 2 screws. So now our metering device is on. We're going to move it to the sewing table and thread it up with elastic thread. Okay, now we're ready to thread our machine up. We showed you how to install the metering device for elastic thread. So we're about to thread our machine up. Here you see our thread stand. The thread stand comes with tensions, but for elastic thread, you do not go through the tension. If you use regular thread, you would go through the tension and you don't use the metering device. For elastic thread, we use the metering device. We do not go through the tensions. Okay, also the elastic thread, the way it comes off the spool, is very critical. Most of the time you have thread breaking, it's in this area over here. It gets tangled. The thread gets tangled up. It gets hung on something. It gets caught on maybe another spool of thread. It might get caught on itself. So you have to make sure the elastic thread is pulling off the spool nice and easy and consistently, and make sure nothing is in the way that it can get hung on. You might have to remove. You might have to take off. You might not put every one of these on there to make sure it doesn't spring off of here and get caught on there. Okay. also the more space. If you have this table set up right here, if you had a little more space, if we move this thread stand back a little further, the more space between the metering device and the thread stand, it seems to work better. It seems to feed the elastic thread more consistently. Okay, now we're going to thread the machine. We're going to thread one spool. I got 5 spools already threaded. We're going to show you how we thread it up with the metering device. Okay, elastic thread, hang on. I got to come through here first. Okay, we go right through the eyelet. We bypass this tension. Okay, through here. Through here. Okay, at this point, let me get my tweezer. At this point right here, this lever right here, because we're going to have to go in between these 2 rollers. You got these 2 rollers here on your metering device. The thread has to go in between there. So you push down on this lever, and there's a slot in the casting right here. You put that lever in that slot, and now we have the opening there. Okay, so to open these rollers up to get our thread through there, we push down on the lever, we close it. There's a slot right here in the casting of the metering device. And now we have an opening there. We can thread our elastic thread. Okay, so we grab our thread. Very easy. Okay, now we're going to come back here at this point. Let's close this. So we're going to close this back up. Okay, you pop that out. And your rollers have closed back up. That's the amount of tension. Right here is how much tension that these rollers give the elastic thread, put on the elastic thread. So you need more tension, we turn it. We need less tension, we tighten it. Less tension, we loosen it. Here's your puller, yes. We spoke about this earlier. You could slow up your puller or speed it up by loosening this nut and adjusting this lever. And this tension here will give you more pressure on the thread or less pressure. Okay. Okay. And now we're ready to sew off. Okay. Lift your presser foot to get started. Get under the puller also. Okay. Turn your hand wheel a few times. Let the stitch pick up before you. Okay. Let's trim off our excess. Okay, and there's your amount of tension. There's your amount of shirring or gathering. Running 6 needles, that's every other needle on this machine. This is a 12 needle quarter. We're running every other needle. If you ran every needle, the shirring, the gathering would be a little more if you ran every needle. More tension will give you more sharing. If you have more tension on your elastic thread, you get more gathering or more sharing. If you change the step, so if we change from a 2mm step to the 4mm step, that will give us a lot more sharing. Okay, so anyway, this is your basic standard model number again, DFB1012PS MD3. That's the model number if you're sewing elastic thread.